We're going to kick off today with two fantastic PGA members, Cameron Doan, PGA Director of Golf at Preston Trail Golf Club and the 2018 National Bill Strausbaugh Award winner, as well as our very own Corey Roberson, PGA Director of Golf at Clubs of Cordillera Ranch, and your 2022 Bill Strausbaugh winner. These gentlemen are going to discuss building culture at your facilities and developing young talent. Please help me in welcoming Cameron and Corey to the stage.
God, thank you. Good morning. Good morning. I applaud Thomas on going casual in education. Our executive director, Mark Harrison, is a taskmaster. So I did this out of habit. Good for you guys. I want to take a picture back to him and say, this is how we can do it. It's a pleasure to be down here in South Texas. We've got a lot of good friends down here from the Joe Black Cup matches that we've had. It's nice to get a chance to sit next to this man right here and talk a little bit about what we do. So the goal this morning is just to talk about how to build a culture and put an architecture in place for the three pieces that I think are the most important for that, for the young people in the room. Hopefully it gives you a roadmap to follow. For the old guys like me, this is stuff that you guys are probably already doing, but maybe it sparks a different idea or kicks you in the tail a little bit to get going. I've spent the last 30 years on the private side of the business, but I grew up on the public side. My dad was a golf professional superintendent in Mexico for 35 years. That's where the architecture of this stuff comes from. And my point in talking about that is I believe that what we're going to talk about this morning works anywhere you are where people like to play golf. It's not about being private only. It's not about having a big budget. These things work anywhere.
Yeah, for me, my dad was a golf professional at Van Zandt Country Club in Canton, Texas, which is about an hour and a half east of Dallas. And there was no such thing as a big budget there. Again, it was private, but it was small and low, and it was a great learning experience.
So the craft there, how to build a culture. We have to pick an order this morning so we can have things to talk about. But I believe all three pieces are important. I don't know that the one is more important than the other, and they feed off each other, which as we go, we'll talk about. So what I'm going to do is lay out the architecture of this stuff. And Corey is going to talk about how he's used it over the last 4 years to get things going at Cordillera Ranch. So what's culture? Culture is basically learning assumptions, how you behave based on the people you're around. So if you walk into Aggie Stadium Saturday afternoon when Alabama's in town, there's a culture. You can feel it. You walk into the golf shop in Memorial Park here in Houston, there's a culture. You can feel it. Somebody was in charge of creating it. It wasn't an accident. It was intentional. Some of it might have worked out, maybe not exactly the way that person or people tried to get it done. Culture is not an accident.
Yeah, and everybody that works at the facility adds to that. It's coming in every day and trying to get better, trying to add to it, trying to enhance it. And that's obviously one of the many lessons that I've learned from this guy, but something that we try to do every day.
So starting with the first piece, what is motivation? In my golf pro lingo, it's a container we have inside ourselves, got a liquid effort. Some days that container starts off full, some days it's not. The leader's job is to get that person to empty that tank on that day, to give the team the best effort they can give. There's lots of different ways to define it. That's how we define it in Preston Trail.
Yeah, and one of the examples that I think is great, and this is a little bit different than motivation, but the example of a water bottle, and that stimulation point where if when you get overloaded, it's too much, and when you're understimulated, it's not enough to get your maximum output. You're trying to sit right there. If you're looking at that water bottle, right there where the label is, that's optimal. If you get overstimulated, you don't perform at your best. If you're understimulated, you don't perform at your best. So trying to figure out how to manage that and maintain that is something that we work with our team on a regular basis, something that I work on myself on a regular basis.
But you gotta remember this part, you can't want to form something. So I don't believe that we can directly motivate the people that work for us or follow us. What we can do as leaders is we can create an environment that's going to bring the best out of the people that we're working for, get our team to go. We can't reach inside of them and empty that tank. That's up to them.
As much as you want to sometimes, to want it for somebody, you just can't. They have to have it.
So the intentional part of this comes out of a Harvard Business School study. A friend of mine named Bruce Crowley brought this to me about 8 or 9 years ago. We're going to go through and talk about what these terms mean. Once we talk about it, I don't think it'll surprise anybody that's looking at them, but I feel like it helps to have a language to use with the people that we're charged with leading. And it also helps us when we're making decisions on how we're trying to do them. So all of these things are useful at times with the exception of inertia. So starting from the bottom up, inertia is what we would call Groundhog Day. So that's the guy who's working from 8 to 4 tomorrow. His alarm goes off at 6:59. His goal is to clock in at 7:59, hide in the corner, do as little as possible without getting fired, and get out of there at 4. We've all seen that guy.
Yeah, I was going to say, we all have that guy in our operation. It's hard to get more out of that guy.
One above that, economic, is exactly what it sounds like. It's working for an extrinsic reward. That at times is very motivational, but it has a shelf life. So the example I use there, if you need to get your outside service crew to give you their A game every time you have an event, you give them a raise, 50 cents an hour. How long can you do that? You can't keep going forever. At some point, you've got a budget you're going to run up against. And at some point on their side of it, it becomes more about the money and less about the effort, and they start to expect it, so it doesn't have the impact that you want.
Yeah, especially in the market that we're in right now, I mean, we're all dealing with it. For us, a lot of our employees are driving by McDonald's and Bill Miller on their way out to Gruyere Ranch, where they can make $15 to $17 an hour. How do we compete with that? We can't. I can't pay all my guys that much money. The economic thing is, I look at it more of a box that has to be checked rather than something that should be the primary focus for somebody to come to work for us.
Then the one above that, emotional. The lingo I use is that's the 8-year-old kid who's got good hand-eye coordination, who's in your junior program because his dad played in college. The kid doesn't want to be there. But the kid is there, and his dad talked him into it and dropped him off. How interested is that kid being there? He's not there for the golf. So you're going to have to find a different way to get that kid engaged. At some point, that's not enough for that kid to try to get back.
Yeah, we actually had an assistant at one time that his dad had passed away, and his dad had told him, hey, I really want you to pursue what's going to make you happy. He thought that being in the golf business was what was going to make him happy, and a little bit of it was him doing it because that's what he thought his dad wanted him to do. We kind of figured out that that's not exactly what was going to make him happy. We found a little different path for him, and he's chasing that now. But yeah, the emotional pressure, it's not going to get you where you need to be.
So I think as leaders, it's our job to understand these three things and do what we can to minimize them. The emotional, another piece of the emotional part of this is yelling at somebody or getting mad at somebody. So how many people in here are responsible for developing or managing at least 5 people? Okay, so over the course of a calendar year, how many times can you yell at them before they tune you out. You can get to the third time. At some point, they're just looking at you, that crazy old guy, they just tune you out. And in today's world, where there's more jobs than there are people to take them, they really aren't going to buy the threat thing because they have a pretty good idea that you're going to have a hard time replacing them. So if that's what you're leaning on to get them to empty their tank, I think it has a short shelf life.
Yeah, I'll lean on that for just a second. So the 7.5, almost 8 years that I worked for Sarge, it only blew up a couple of times. Now, when he did, it was pretty significant. But one of the things he used to always say is like, it's like having a 6-shooter. You only got so many bullets, and you can't fire them all at once. You got to be pretty selective when you use them.
Simon, did I ever fire a bullet at you?
Finally, 6 times shoot? That was it?
Hey, how many bullets have you fired?
They called the zingers. That's called the zingers.
So this is the side of the spectrum that we're always trying to live on. We'll talk about these three, but I think the way you motivate people is you put a culture in place that emphasizes these three things. They're going to drive to the gates and be ready to go. So play is the strongest form of motivation of all. That's probably what represents everybody in this room. We love being around the golf business. We love being around people in the golf business. We love teaching the game. We love talking about the game. We love reading about the game. It's easy for us to empty our tank. The trick is, at some point, you can lose that because the stuff we deal with, the meetings we go to, the complaints we might get, will maybe force that club out of our hands and get away from it. People my age, I'm 54, so guys my age, I think that's a risk. I think you can get to a point where the love goes away and your motivation drops.
Yeah, one of the things that we've tried to instill in our team is put your hands on the golf club every day for at least 30 minutes. None of us got into this business because we like running golf tournaments or managing a budget or any of that stuff. Like, we got into it because we love golf. And so figuring out how to make the job fun is a big deal. Playing golf is a part of that. Teaching and fitting and getting to learn more about equipment and all that stuff, it's fun. And so we try to instill that in our team. It's simple. We can all carve 30 minutes out of the day to go hit some putts, hit some chips, hit a few balls, whatever it may be. We all have that time. You have to do it.
One below that called purpose. In sports terms, that's playing for the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back of the jersey. We're wired as human beings, we're social creatures. We want to be part of something. Some of us want that more than others, but we all want that connection. We all need that connection. One of the opportunities we have in the golf business is we've got a game, we've got people around it. So we have a large advantage before any shots even fired. If we use that, it's easy to create purpose. It's also what you get, the feeling you get from helping somebody. So you get that beginner in the bunker, and all they want to do is get the ball out of the bunker and stop somewhere on the green. You're in there for 30 minutes, hammering away. They finally get it done. They feel good, so do you, because you help them get there. Or it's what I did, a man like Corey showing up in 2012, big old bundle of potential, very intelligent, loved the game, didn't know what he didn't know. Now I'm getting to sit next to him talking about this stuff. That makes it easy for me to stay motivated and helping the kids that come along behind him.
Yeah, it's just working towards something. And it's, again, I think, I'd like to think that everybody on my team has a lot of purpose in what they're doing.
So a leader has to stay motivated. That's a big part of purpose. Because it takes effort. The easy thing to do is you're responsible for a group of people. You show up, you say good morning, you kind of skip past anything else. Usually you go out in the office, you start checking emails, you get in the day, and before long the day's over and you really haven't spent any time with anybody that's looking to you to get better, put in the effort. You have to stop and think about it. You have to work at it. So it has to feel good enough to you to do it in order to keep Potential, so that's what he was looking for when he came to us. Potential is when you believe that the people you're going to go to work for or the people you're going to work with can get you where you want to go. That's the 12-year-old kid that shows up in your junior program that wants to play on the high school job. That kid wants to go hard. That makes it easier on you as a coach. You're not going to have to talk that kid into splitting time on the range or hanging around for 10 minutes and working on 3 footers. They want guidance, but you're not going to have to push it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a valuable point there. You know, as a leader, it's your job to help them get to where they want to go. He helped me get to where I wanted to go, and I'm trying to help my guys get to where they want to go. So it's, you know, when they're motivated by potential, it's great, but it also relies on you as a leader to put a lot into it.
So if you're in charge of creating a culture, if you're selling the tickets for that end zone at Aggie Stadium, or you're in charge of the sports bar downtown watching the Texans, or you're putting together a team to run your junior program, you're thinking about these 3 things as you put it together. This is the architecture we use. Hopefully it will get a little bit easier to be intentional about what you're doing. So this is what our boards and committees and city managers and presidents and owners are after. Can you deliver results? Those of us that are in charge of an operation or leading something, at some point, we're going to get measured. There's going to be a bottom line number. There's going to be a get the field to a certain size. They're going to be getting the first 100 kids signed up for the junior program. They're going to get that 4th junior league team, because last year we had 3. We all get measured. This stuff leads to good results.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, there's a lot of different ways of measuring performance. But when you get the team performing at a high level, they engage with the membership or your customers or your clients, whoever it may be, in a different way. And it creates something that people want to be around. And I grew up around that a little bit. I know you did too. And I got to be a part of that across the trail for a long time. Like the guys that come out to PT love being there. And they love being there because of the culture that's been built. And then, you know, the same thing at Corriere Ranch, you know, Mark Wall started a really good foundation there, and I'm just kind of taking it and running with it. And our place has changed a lot. So we're figuring out how to adapt with that and whatnot, but, you know, we've got a lot of people who want to be a part of what we're doing, and it's fun.
Those 4 names down there will remind me to tell a couple of stories. So the 3rd name, a kid named Newberry. We gave him a job in our outside service operation when he was 16. He did not interview well, but his friend, looking out for him, his dad was a buddy, the father of a kid who we had put through our scholarship program, asked us to give us a chance. This is a kid that had ADHD. He had a really difficult time making friends. His motor ran a great deal faster than his mouth. He didn't know anything about jobs. He was an absolute bull in a china shop. First couple of days, Newberry came along about the time he left.
Yeah, I don't remember.
So this kid's 2nd day at work, one of our guys hands him a couple of shag bags, puts him in a golf cart, and asks him to go pick up the short gamer. He goes down there, gets off the pad, drives right across the first big grass green he comes to, picking balls. He thinks he's doing a good job. Superintendent was not quite as impressed. Good news is the assistant who was running him, what he could have done is he could have grabbed him by the ear and just yelled at him for 10 minutes and we'd have lost the kid. He put his arm around him. He explained how things work. He educated him. A couple of months later, he's leading the shift group. Now he's at the University of Texas in the ROTC program, on the way to becoming a SEAL. Spent last summer in Russia in a language immersion program. So I don't know exactly how much we had to do with developing that kid, but that was an inflection point Or we could have put the emotional pressure on him and just hammered him, which is what happened to this kid most of his life. We went the other way. There's a golfer who's been since the school of Texas on our scholarship program, and he's going to make a difference. And then the fourth thing there, Raheem is on our weight staff at Preston Trail. He's an Iranian. He got big goggle glasses. He's 68 years old. He's still pulling a china shop after all this time, but never touched a golf ball. The scholarship program that our members put together, one of the cool parts about it is we have a day on Monday where we close everything down. The employees play on teams with members. This guy wanted to be a part of it about 4 years ago. Comes down to the golf shop and asks me to play. Doesn't have any idea what to do with the golf ball. He calls, hey, I want to go and hang out with those guys on the field. So one of our assistants took him outside, spent 5 minutes with him, learning how to putt. After the tournament's over, we have a shootout, and we kind of cheat. And how the shootout's going to work, it becomes an alternate shot. We're trying to get the employees that haven't spent much time with the club in their hand to be the guys that can putt. We don't want them to hit the number bunker off the tee. We're trying to put them in a chance, an opportunity where they can actually have some fun and win. So he ends up with a downhill 4-footer. The team he's on to advance, there's about 120 guys around the 17th green, and he buries it. So this guy every day comes in wanting to talk about putting, and his performance upstairs on the weight staff is 2x of what it was. So again, that's taking the architecture that we talked about, taking the game that we're fortunate enough to be a part of, giving this guy a good experience. He feels like he's part of the team. He's going to make his thing.
Yeah, we about 6 months ago, we had a guy come to us that was a retired police officer, and I pretty quickly kind of realized, like, hey, this guy's got it together. He's smart, understands how to manage people, is driven. I don't have to tell him what to do. He's going out and doing the right thing. And we've figured out how to build his role bigger. So he is now the outside staff manager, and we're giving him more responsibility, paying him a little bit more too, which he appreciates. But at the end of the day, he didn't come to us looking for that. He just wanted something to fill his time. But he kind of saw what we're doing and wanted to be a bigger part of it, which is really cool. It's fun to have people like that on your team. One other thing to mention, the why is very important. Newberry, that kid, when you go out and put your arm around him and you explain why what you're doing is important, how to actually do it, it can have a really big impact. Just biting somebody's head off and saying, you gotta do it this way, it's not gonna get you anywhere. Slow down a little bit, explain it, help them understand why it's important. Why is it important that we have 2 towels in every golf cart that are folded and clean? It's just explaining it to them has a big impact.
So the second piece of this is leadership. What's leadership? There's lots of definitions. This is the one that we use. Simply get a group of people to accomplish something together that they might not have accomplished as well on their own. So somebody has to be in charge of that. One of the examples I use, everybody that goes to work for us starts outside. Whatever their level of experience is, whatever their age is, they start outside. I think one of the best places to learn how to lead is if you're handed 3 high school kids that have been working for a couple of weeks each, Saturday afternoon in April, 2 o'clock to close, you've got to bring everything in. You got to get the range picked. You got to get the cars put up. You got to get things set up for the Sunday morning opening for ready to go. You're going to learn how to lead doing that. You can't do it all yourself. So what can you do to get a group of people gathered up together that may not know what they're doing to get something done? That's where we start.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that. I think one of the things that's fun to see is when the team comes together, they accomplish something that they couldn't have accomplished on their own, but at the same time, they're all getting better individually. That's when you know you're really making an impact.
So the flip side of this, and this is the part that I think most people don't really understand when they wind up in a position of leadership, it's not always easy because the buck stops with you. So this is a Nick Saban, Mike Leach deal. You're the coach that they're allowing. If somebody's wearing their hat backwards and their shirt's untucked on your outside service shirt, you can stop that. Whatever the culture is in your operation, if you're the leader, it's up to you to make sure that it sticks. If it gradually erodes, is that the fault of the people within the culture that are doing it, or is that the fault of the leader that's allowing it? Bob, that culture at Whispering Pines.
No, no hair on their face.
That's right.
You don't say that.
That's right. When you show up at Whispering Pines and you greet everybody there, you know exactly what to expect. And it's your job to make sure that it sticks.
Yeah, give them one to look over everyone, that way, punch your clock and let them know if there's something I don't think you're doing.
And eventually they want to do the right thing. I don't believe there's many people that actually show up with the intent of doing a bad job. But they're doing things, they're going to do what they're allowed to do. So those kids you have to get on pretty soon. Those kids are getting on the new kids,
That's
right?
exactly right.
So it trickles down.
That's the culture thing is pretty good.
That's right.
Policing each other.
Yeah, speaking of Whispering Pines, who here played the 999 last year? When we pulled up into the parking lot and saw those 15 to 16 or 20 kids, however many it was, all standing there jumping, kind of waving, saying, hey, over here, park this way. That's pretty cool. Those guys love what they're doing. Y'all built a really neat culture there. It's something that people want to be a part of.
So, back to the leadership thing. Good leaders have these 5 traits. They're very aware of what they do and how they're perceived by the people that they're charged with leading. They can regulate their emotions under stress. We talked about the motivation part. Empathy. So that's different from sympathy. Empathy is having an understanding for the other side of the conversation. For the people that you're trying to lead, you get where they're coming from. Sympathy is just feeling sorry for them. Empathy is understanding what they're going through and helping them through it, but also holding them accountable. And then the ability to communicate. You can be the world's best leader, but if you can't get your point across, it's not going to get much done. One of the old sayings we use, you can explain it to them, but you can't understand it for them. Well, if they're not understanding it, there's a pretty good chance the way you're explaining it is not as good as it could be.
You have to adapt your approach for everyone. I'll give you an example of my team, our merchandiser, Camille. She loves what she does, and she's great. But if I hit her between the eyes with something, I am not going to be able to change or help her. I have to go about it a little different way. I got to be a little bit more delicate with my delivery and explain to her what we're trying to do. You have to adapt your delivery to the person that you're working with in order to get the most out of them. And it has to do with understanding and being able to control these elements.
So this is an intentional thing that we do with the young people in workforce at Preston Trail. We are paying attention to these 5 things. They're going to go on and lead another club or another municipal operation or be a director of construction somewhere. If they're good at these 5 things, they can actually do the job well that they're hired to do. 2 different skill sets. The skills to get the job, the skills to do the job. It's my job to make sure that the job they get, they can actually do and do it well enough to keep it for a while. This is a big part of it. So, fixed mindset versus growth mindset. If if you're leading, you have to hold yourself to a higher standard than the people that you lead. And that means you've got to pay attention to what's going on around you and know when to adapt. So those 4 names on there are coaches. I do a lot of referencing back with the young people, or of course the football and basketball coaches, because that's a very easy tie back into the culture, the whole ESPN, Sports Center, next 30-second culture that people are in now. And these guys are good examples of that. So I'm going to peel one story off, and I think Corey's got a couple. Nick Saban, probably not well thought of in these parts. So he showed up at the University of Alabama in 2007 or 8, running the old SEC offense of 3 or 4 yards in a cloud of dust. Let's beat people up. Let's keep the score down under 30. Let's keep it close going to the 4th quarter and win with defense and special teams. And he won 2 or 3 national titles that way. The last couple he won, dead opposite. He's got quarterbacks winning the Heisman Trophy. He's throwing them 30 times a game. He's trying to get to 50 before the other team does. Same coach, same record, different methodology. He adapted because the game changed enough at the high school level that the kids he was recruiting came with different skills. They're leaner, they're quicker, they expect more. So rather than sticking to what he'd always done, which you can think of coaches that did that, he adapted.
Yeah, so my example is actually about him. When I started at PT, I was low man on the totem pole, but I was hired as an assistant golf professional. And I kind of worked my way up and eventually ended up becoming the first assistant. But where I'm going with that is the model that we had when I first started there was traditional, I would say. We had, I think, 4 assistants or 5 assistants and a head golf professional. After a year or 2, and the employment market started to change and started adapting, started changing the team up. So we started hiring really young guys, starting them outside as AIT assistants training. And we ended up, at one point when I was there, I think we had 12 golf professionals, 12 people who were in the program. But it's adjusting based on what's going on. And it ain't all about, how much money you can throw at it, right? It's taking a look at who you got on your team and figuring out what's the best way that we're going to be able to accomplish what we're trying to do. And maybe it's putting somebody that's been in charge of tournaments in charge of something else. So that he's growing a little bit, but the team is adapting and changing. The time that I was at BT, the structure of the team changed significantly. We used to always joke that Sergeant just gets bored and likes to mix things up, so every year it's just changing. But it's, again, it's a factor of trying to figure out what you've got, understand it, and trying to figure out how to get better. You're always trying to push forward. The moment you stop, you become stagnant. You ain't getting any better.
Who in here knows who Larry Brown is, basketball coach? So Larry's had a lot of jobs. He's the only coach, I think, that's won an NCAA title and an NBA title. In addition to that, every team that he took over won more games in their first year than the previous year that led to the job in over. So he was extraordinary in going in and making things better immediately. I happened to be at a dinner. His last job was at SMU. So I was at a dinner that some guys had put together, and quickly it turned to him, hold the court, and everybody listened. And one of the guys around the table brought up the stat I just mentioned and asked him, okay, so what did you do? What were you trying to get done when you first took over? And this was his answer. He said, my job was to get the most out of that group of kids that I could, because I couldn't change the kids that I inherited. So the first thing I had to do was prove to them that I knew what I was doing, that I understood the game well enough that they should pay attention to. So as leaders, that's the first thing we've got to do. We've got to get them to trust that we know what we're doing. Second thing he said I had to do was prove to him that I could make them better as individual players, that they could grow if they would follow my lead. So going back to that motivation spectrum, play, purpose, and potential. Potential is people that come to you because they want to get somewhere and they believe you can get them. I already said the third thing I had to do was prove to that group of kids that if they played together the way I wanted them to play, the style I wanted them to play, they would win more than they've been winning. So going back to that example a little while ago about the assistant that's handed 3 16-year-old kids that have been working for 2 weeks, how are they going to close out the day? There's going to have to be some organization and structure to that. You're not just going to say, hey guys, go get it. Otherwise, they're going to drive right across that mid-grass chicken. And the fourth thing, and this is the most important, he said I had to convince them that I cared more about them as people than I did as players. They weren't just numbers on the back of the jersey to me to make my record get better and me to get my next job. They had to know that I cared about them.
So when I took over at Cordier Ranch, one of the first things that I did within the first couple of weeks, I had everybody over at my house. Everybody was, my immediate team, all of our golf professionals. And this is the list that I went through with them. And explaining it and laying it out is one thing, but then getting them to buy into what you're doing, that's another. And I was pretty fortunate to have a team that did buy into what I was selling, and we're trying to transform and trying to change and trying to grow and keep getting better. But at the end of the day, like having this right here on the forefront of your mind, whenever you take over a new team or whenever you've been doing the same job for 5 or 7 years, and it gives you a roadmap to help people.
So I'm constantly referring to coaches. I believe those of us that are head golf professionals / directors of golf, our job is very similar to being a college basketball coach or a college football coach. Those coaches are dealing with the young players, they're dealing with administration, they're dealing with boosters that write big checks and expect access and results. They're dealing with administration that may or may not understand what they do. They're dealing with media, and they're the face of the program. So they've got 6 different things that they're dealing with. I think we're dealing with the same 6 things. I was in a conversation with a couple of higher-ups in a management company that owns a lot of places, probably 200 places around the world. And anybody in here work for Club Work? So I guess invited, excuse me. So I was sitting with a couple of guys way up the food chain, and they were asking me, hey, we're having a hard time hiring people. We can't get golf professionals to go to work for us. Would you share your thoughts? So I'm talking to one guy that's in charge of hiring golf professionals and another guy that's in charge of hiring general managers. I said, okay, how honest do you guys want me to be? And the golf professional guy said, honest. I said, when you go to top, pros go to die. Because you'll get somebody in there that loves the game, loves to teach it, talk about it, read about it, run the golf tournaments and people get to do it, run junior programs, develop people. You get the really good ones and you stick them in an office running spreadsheets and going to meetings. So you're sucking right out of what they're good at. So that led to the guy that hires the general managers to jump in a little bit. And I gave him the analogy of the coaches. And I'll clean this up because I don't want, this is probably being recorded, but he wasn't getting it. And I said, hey, look, how many people do you know that write checks to go watch an athletic director run a meeting? You guys are the athletic directors, we're all athletic directors, we're the coaches. That's not saying one's better than another because you need both. But you got to understand what we're good at and what people want out of us if you want to get better. Don't turn us into athletic directors because that's not what we grew up wanting to be. Anyway, sorry if I offend anybody with that, but I believe that's true. It also creates an interesting dynamic that the athletic director sometimes is making a mess of the coach. Isn't that right, Brent? It makes it interesting. Those boosters aren't writing checks to go watch that AD run a meeting on it. They want to win. So then there's the organization of it. How to categorize the people that you're in charge of leading. So going back to the football example, if you've got 12 left tackles and no receivers, that's probably not going to work out for very long. So you as the leader, it's your job to figure out what the players on your team are good at, what they love to do, and get them in a place where they can not only enjoy their own life, but they can help the team win. And try to hide their weaknesses as best you can. And if they're there to develop and go on, you're going to have to work on those weaknesses and probably have some hard conversations. But if that's not their goal, and we'll get into the categories, if they're a lifer, then you may not ever address those weaknesses. You just bury them so nobody can see them.
Yeah, this, really cool last night to get to share that evening with Katie. But this is what we did with her. When I came in and figured out that, like, hey, this girl's special. She wants to teach. Figured out how to make a path for that. And I'm going to try to keep her as long as I can. And Jacques' role, our head professional, is different. I mean, he's in a development role. He doesn't want to be there long term. And we're trying to help him grow in areas where he needs to improve and go on and leave and go run an operation somewhere else. And he's going to be really good at it. The teammates, we hire a bunch of young guys in our outside operation, college kids, high school kids. We have a couple of retired vets. Getting all three of those categories to work together is important. But understanding where everyone falls and then how to coach them is very important.
So as we go through these, I think this is where the leader has to be the most creative. So I talked about my dad at the beginning. He ran a couple of public operations in New Mexico. He didn't have 25 assistants applying for every opening he had. There were times where he didn't have anybody that was working for him in the program, but he still had to deliver a product to the people that were coming in on top. So he had to figure out how to be creative. That's where I learned this category thing was directly from him, which is a couple of examples here in a minute. I think the farther off the beaten path you are in which we're running, the more important this part is. If you're leading, you got to understand this. Everybody on your team is having an impact on the culture of that team. Nobody's neutral. They're either making it better or making it worse. And if you're ignoring that as a leader, that's on you, not on them. It's your job to flip that impact to its name.
One of the questions that I like to ask my team all the time, and they probably get away with this, but I always say, what have you done to make us better today? Think about that. And the first couple of times, Eden Rounds, we called Ed, one of our young guys, and he would just kind of laugh and not think I was very serious about asking a question. And then you kind of realize, okay, I gotta have an answer because he's expecting me to ask him that question every time. It's intentional. When you pull in the gates of our place, we want you thinking about how you're gonna make the team better, the club better, how you're gonna get after it. What are you gonna do to positively contribute to what we got going on? Positively contribute to our culture.
Going back to that motivation spectrum and the word purpose, talking about we are social creatures, we want to be part of something. So that person that's having a negative impact, they probably didn't start that way. And they probably really aren't enjoying being that way. They just don't know what to do about it. You're actually helping that person if you put your arm around them, look them in the eye and said, hey dude, this isn't good. You're dragging us down. I'm going to help you flip it. I'm going to turn you into a positive impact, but you've got to meet me halfway and put some other things. you're helping that person. It's uncomfortable to have that conversation, but I really don't believe any of us show up wanting to be a negative impact. So, lifers, a couple of different examples of lifers. To me, that's either the director of instruction, or the director of golf, the general manager, or the outside service guy, caddy master, who are going to be at that property for the long term. There's a great example of a lifer right there. You love Whispering Pines. You don't want to go anywhere else. So lifers they've found their spot at their place, and that's what gets them going on. That is all about purpose. You're part of something that's bigger than yourself. You're not looking at the jobs that are coming out. You're not working on your resume. You're trying to figure out how to make that place better every day.
Number one,
Number one. You guys were number one. Nobody can catch you guys.
we're working on.
Chris Rowe thinks it's him. It's really you.
It's
Chris,
a team.
is
It's a
Chris here?
team. There's a team out there.
You're right, it is a team.
Yeah, you just need it there. Second category of lifers. Those are the ones that show up. That's the high school kid that's going to work in the back. So our goal for that kid, our first goal, it's his first job. We want to make him as good an employee in his second job as we can. The kid doesn't know the importance of showing up on time, wearing his hat the correct way, getting the shirt tucked in, shaven, because nobody's explained to him, look, this is part of being a team. He didn't want to not do that, right? So our first goal is to make him better at his second job. Our second goal is to make him feel like he's part of something. This kid may or may not have any desire of having a future in the golf business, but it's up to us to get a positive impact out of it, however long we have it. And if you think about it, those of us that are running operations, the majority of the people on our team fall in the lifer category. They're either with us for a long time, we're going to become friends with them, we figure out how to get the most out of them, or they're for a short time. How do you get them invested in caring about it as much as you do?
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. Have any of y'all had an outside guy that never had touched a golf club before and started playing golf while they were working for you? It's pretty rewarding, right? It feels good. You know, you gotta get to know them. You gotta get to know what motivates them, what they're interested in, what they want to do. You know, the kids that are in college that work for you, what are they studying? What's their degree in? What are they trying to chase? How can you help them? It takes a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, but the more you give to them, the more you're going to get out of them. And you guys do a really good job of that in your team.
How many in here have seen the original version of Bad News Bears? So, our outside service lead is named Jeff Struby. He's been with us since 2009. He's Buttermaker. He's that guy. He can make anybody laugh. He puts his arm around those high school kids and gets them going. Huge impact on what happens over there. Huge impact. He has a huge impact on guys like Corey. He's been around golf his whole life. Went down the assistant professional route for a while, was caddying on the nationwide tour for a year. His words, he spent more than he made. This guy was working the graveyard shift in a hotel on the tollway. When we were shut down for renovation, we were building our outside service. We were canceled and had. Working for us for a couple of weeks before we knew what we had. So we figured out what we had, and we just keep throwing more things his way. He's our culture guy. He's our boss. Those kids would run through a wall for him. You gotta have that guy. If you don't have one, you gotta find one.
They're not easy to find, by the way.
They're not.
But yeah, it's true. He's an interesting guy, very, very special, big part of what goes on there. But at the end of the day, it's about having people on your team that want to get better. that are motivated by play, purpose, potential. They love what they're doing. They know that they're working towards something. They got somewhere to go. It's when you find guys like that, you got to figure out how to make the job special. One of the things we, again, used Katie as an example earlier, but we just keep trying to throw more stuff at her with the player development stuff. She just soaks it up and runs it. That's how I'm going to keep her motivated in what she's doing, is to keep the job interesting, to keep it changing.
So another life example, this is on the public side. The golf course, the second golf course my dad ran, this is the beauty of the meetings. You were a senior, you were over 62, $250 a year for unlimited golf. So those of you that have been in that situation, that group can kill you. If you raise the price of coffee a quarter, there's a problem. If they don't get to play golf on Thursday morning the time they expect to play, there's a problem. They're not going to spend any money over and above that $250. They've got a lot of time on their hands. And if they decide that you're not taking care of them, they're going to turn on you. They're going to write letters to the city council. They will run you out there. And I didn't understand this at the time. My dad had hired a guy out of this group to be his opener. So this guy had spent 25 years as a dispatcher for the Budweiser distributor in Roswell, New Mexico. The guy had hair lip, you could barely understand him, he couldn't break 100, but he spent 25 years organizing the guys that drove the beer trucks. Anybody spend any time with a guy driving the beer truck? That's not an easy guy to organize. So when he retired, he had nothing to do, and his wife was not going to let him hang out at home. He didn't get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go get that going all this time. So my dad hires him to open. So he hires one of the guys that he's worked about to come in and take over. Within a month, this guy's name was Doan Fox. He had turned those 50 guys that are paying $250 a year for unlimited golf into his workforce. He had them turn the coffee out. He had them raising the flag. He had them pulling out the bull carts. None of them are getting paid anything. He made them part of something. And these guys went from being grumpy to being excited to come in every day. I had no idea what I was seeing. Brilliant move on his part. He took what was easily the riskiest part of his job and he flipped it with one guy.
So it reminds me of the story of my dad, whenever he was running Van Zandt Country Club. He hired a guy named Jim Harmon that was retired from the post office. So lots of personality that Jim had. But he was reliable. He was never late, opened the golf shop every morning, never missed bringing up a cart fee, and every little dollar counted at Van Zandt Country Club. He kind of understood what his role was when he was good at it and put him in that position. And that's what your dad did. That's what you do.
Developers. So that's Corey. That was Simon 20 years ago. That's the kid, the 12-year-old kid in your junior program that wants to make the high school team. Or the 16-year-old kid on the high school team that wants to play in college. That's the kid that's coming to you because they believe through you they can get where they want to go. Now that's a hell of a responsibility on your part. Because that's somebody coming to you and putting their future in your hands. They're trusting you to get them there. So you've got to live up to that. So getting those people to empty their tank for you is not a concern. That's the easy part. The hard part is having the energy and the organizational skills and the creativity to keep coaching those developers, to keep putting new opportunities in front of them, to keep pushing them in an indirect way, to challenge them not to be satisfied with what they're given. That's also where your operation gets better. So I've been lucky to have some very talented people work for us. And one of the things that happens is the great ones leave large fingerprints on what we do at Preston Trail. 99% of the new ideas do not come from me. They come from guys like this, or guys like Simon, or the guys that are there because they want to get better and are pushing so hard all the time. They're trying to think of a better way. They're throwing out ideas. It's up to me to decide which ones might work, which ones have no chance, and maybe which ones need to get parked over there in the corner, and we'll get to those when we're a little farther down the road. They will push you as a leader.
But also get some thought in. When you get to take some ownership of what you're doing, you get to put your hands on it, mold it, you're more motivated. You're bought in. The in-box, I don't remember exactly what it was called, but the all-in, bought-in deal, like it. When you get to have some ownership over what you're doing, those guys are all in.
So that last line down there, the opportunity to fail. Those of you that are coaching kids that want to become competitive, whatever level they're chasing, somewhere along the way when they're out there under the gun, it's going to be just them. So when you're coaching, if you're always telling them what to do and how to do it, when they wind up in that situation and you're not there, they don't know what to do. So part of being a good coach for a kid like that is creating opportunities for them to make a decision. Some of the times it's going to be the wrong one. And then you talk about it afterwards. Some of the time it's the right one, but it didn't execute. Then you talk about it afterwards. That failure is actually the best coaching point. So I'm going to tell a story on you. So he'd been with us about a month. And we had a non-res member from Louisiana who had come up through the oil fields. This guy's accent was thicker than the bacon he ate in the morning. He brought his 3 buddies over and he's going to play golf. So he's rolling through the shop, doing the Rodney Dangerfield thing. I'm getting 3 of those and 2 of those. He's trying to show off for his buddies. And he runs across a leather wine tote. You could ask, what are we doing with a wine tote and stop at Crescent Trail? That's the kind of thing that drifters would have. But one of our young guys, Philip Prude, and decided we need to get another good business. So we had one in there. $450 price tag. A little wine tote. So Corey, being from Canton, Texas, hadn't seen many wine totes either.
Still don't think I've seen very many, but.
So this guy pulled it up and said, hey, what is this? Corey looks at it, wings it, and says, that's a shoe bag. Had room for 2 bottles of wine, all leather with some nice woolens. That's a shoe bag.
Hopefully he wore a 13 extra narrow.
And we had managed not to put a price tag on it. This guy, I'll take the damn 2 of those. One for me and one for my buddies. So he takes them, works his way out the practice tee. Corey eventually gets down to ringing it up. $450 each. His nickname became Shoe Bag the next day. we took care of Mr. Murphy on the back, and as soon as Kirby heard that story, Shoe Bag. He learned from that, and the nickname follows him today, doesn't it? Hopefully it'll follow you down here now.
Yeah, Charlie still calls me Shoe every now and then, so.
But the point is, stuff's going to happen. So you climb on that guy who's trying to do the right thing and ends up doing the wrong thing, or you as the leader step in, handle it, build a nickname out of it, took what could have been a negative, flipped it around to be a positive, got a nickname out of it. That's what leaders should be doing. Because it's going to happen. So we kind of hit this already, the teammate part. High school kids, the teachers and coaches that retire and they've spent 30 years being around kids and they're 62 years old and they love being around golf, being around people, and they come to you and they want to be your marshal and they'll trade out for free golf. Somebody else, my dad had a hard time finding people to close the shop in the summer, so he took this guy that was the vice president of the junior high school, scratch player, but vice principal. The vice principal was the one back then were in charge of discipline, so this is not a guy long on personality. He plugged him in because he knew he could trust him. By making him part of it, the game, so to speak, accepted him. And actually brought this guy's personality out. He went from being the disciplinarian in town to being one of the guys. Teammate thing's a big deal.
It is. You know, the generation gap is interesting. Like we've got, on our outside crew, we've got some older guys, we've got some, middle-aged guys, and a bunch of young kids. Getting all three of those groups to work together is interesting. But when they're all working towards a common goal and they realize that each of them can learn something from each other, that's how you start moving forward.
And in the mix here, lifers, developers, and teammates, not only the reasons are there, but the ages and the socioeconomic backgrounds, it turns into a pretty cool cultural mix. And I think everybody on your team will benefit from that. So I talked as we began this segment about you don't want 12 left tackles and no receivers. You don't want everybody on your team to be alike. If they've all got the same background, the same interests, the same age, you're going to be missing some things in your operation, but I also think you miss some things in that culture. I think differences actually is what makes it work rather than all similarities. So, before we go to that last slide, another Saban thing popped out. I heard this on a podcast. He was giving a speech to the American Football Coaches Association in 2014 or 15 after one of his national championship wins. And he was talking about the difference, as Corey said, between today's kids and yesterday's kids. And he referenced, he played college football in Kent State for a guy named Don James, who ended up going on to the University of Washington, won a bunch of games. Some guys in here are old enough to know who he was, like me. He was the old school, one-party disciplinarian. There wasn't any explanation of why. And the Saban said, I played college football, I did what the coach said, I didn't question. That's not how it is today. The young people that are working for us want to know why.
Absolutely.
They want to know more about it. So Saban went on to talk about this. He said, back in the day, the saying was, there's no I in team. He followed that up by saying, but there is an I in win. And our job is to win. So his development of philosophy changed. He went from being the old school, this is how it's going to be, you're like it or you're leaving, to making each kid the best version of themselves that he could, and showing them how that was going to set them up for success in the future. Most of them, in his case, are thinking they're going to play in the NFL. He knows they're not all going to do that. If they do, they're going to get hurt and they're going to get out of there in 2 years. He's trying to teach them how to be successful in life. So he's taken the I and he's turning it into the we. So I believe that I've got 2 kids, 22 and 20, so I get that whole generational thing and how it's all about them and they're spending their lives on their phone. And yeah, it is different, but they still want the same thing. You just may have to get there a different way than whoever you work for got to.
Yeah, they want the same things, and yeah, you gotta go about it a little bit different, but you can also learn from it. And that's one of the things that I've had to consciously make the effort of doing, is that you can learn something from everybody, whether it's learning what to do or what not to do, which may be the case, but you can learn something from everyone. You just gotta pay attention a little bit.
So this last slide here, then we're about to get the hook from Thomas, I think. And this goes back to the burden of leadership. More often than not, the problem is going to land on your desk or in your lap. So if you're leading the junior golf program, you've got 15 kids in your Tuesday afternoon after school program. You've got one kid that doesn't want to be there. So that kid's going to want to do one of two things. They're either going to ignore everything you say, or they're going to act out for attention. The ones that act out for attention are going to have a negative impact on those other 14 kids. So you're a leader. Do you let that happen? Because you're not sure or you're afraid to deal with that one kid? Or do you deal with that kid because it's your job to protect the experience of the other 14? Because if I'm a parent and I'm sitting over by the fence watching, and my kid is one of those 14 whose experience is being worsened by the one that's acting out, I'm not mad at that kid that's acting out. I'm mad at you. Because you didn't do anything about it. That's on you. So the slide there is about the underachiever. Society wants to slow the bus down so that the people that can't run very fast can catch up. I actually think it's the opposite. I think as leaders, it's our responsibility to the ones that want it the most to make sure that we're creating that for them. And then we take the one off. So we're going to do what we can, but we certainly can't dismiss them. But you can't put the risk, the group at risk for the sake of the individual.
Yeah, I mean, we all are faced with tough decisions on a regular basis. I know our facility has been busier the last couple of years, and I know all of you have faced the same thing, which has brought unique challenges. But it's the better side of it's the better of two evils, I guess, right? I'd way rather be too busy and trying to figure it all out than not busy enough and trying to figure out how we're gonna, make more money. But at the end of the day, this deal, sometimes you just gotta cut bait and go. Sometimes you gotta let somebody go, and it's gonna be a tough decision, and it might mean that your closing crew that afternoon is gonna be one man short. But you gotta make the decision, you gotta explain it to your guys, and help them understand why you did it. Because again, when you explain the why, a lot of times, people understand. And when you're making the right decision for the team, for the whole, you're doing the right thing. It may be tough on the front end, but you're doing the right thing in the long run.
So thanks to all for your attention. Hopefully we rattle some things out there that for the older ones like me, we kickstart some new ideas, and for the younger ones, we give you the framework. I want to thank Kelly Gilly and Doug Turner sitting back there. So I've been a member since 1994. I think our career services folks do more for us than anybody else in the organization. They listen to what we're trying to get done. They help us when we need it. They go into jobs that open up and they advocate for our profession. They are a huge part of what makes things grow. I wish we had twice as many. I think that's an area where the organization could get better. And I wish that some of the organization understood more about what we actually do. We're leaders. Golf is our vehicle, but leadership is what we do. And Kelly and Doug are two spectacular leaders that do a lot for us. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
I believe Scott and Thomas are going to email this out. My goal was to put a framework out there, something you can take notes on. My email address is cdoan@ptgc.net. It's easy to find on pga.org. If anyone has an interest in talking about any of this, this is a passionate thing for me because I believe this is how we make the next generation better. Yeah, shoot me a note. You can answer a question, set up a time to talk, whatever. It's been a pleasure doing this with you.
Thanks, Sergeant.
Thank you all.